Is that enough for you allowed to learn Gemara? Too early in the morning. For this. What's that? I see one of the Bachram is on. They're supposed to learn this before davening. Anyway, okay. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. That's what we're learning. Hashem to do some Migdash immediately. We're going to start Samach Vav. Samach Vav. Yeah, it's actually the last two words of 66a. Samach Vav Hamanal. We're going to go to Samach Vav Haman base. What we're saying over here is, oh my gosh, it's not you, it's Mendel. Oh, wow. It's late, no? Okay. Yeah. Isn't that nice? So, Gemara over here, we were talking about if one woman, if one witness says that a woman committed adultery, so is that considered enough that they become prohibited, right? That they should have to separate. It's not enough to kill for a death penalty, of course, but should they have to separate? So that was a machlekes Abaye and Rava. Right, woman can't be a witness. So it's not a woman being a witness. One witness testified that a woman committed adultery. So do they have to separate because of that one witness? That's right, but that had a basis for it because you had two witnesses on the warning. Over here, just one witness shows up. Says, "You never heard of anything about this before. It's just I noticed your wife was with someone else." Okay, so Rava said she's not believed, and Abaye says that she is believed. We're talking about when the husband was quiet. Okay, so Abaye gave this whole explanation where he knows this from. He brought from the story with Yanai that over there one witness said apparently it was a case of one witness, and we believed him. Rava says, I'll prove it to you that one witness is not believed. On top of 66. Where do I know this from? You don't believe one witness when it comes to such matters. What's going on? All good?
How long were you here for? I leave, I think, on Monday, and you won't see me.
Okay. How's Shalom gonna come when you're not here?
We're practicing. See how that goes next session, right?
Okay, it's done. We'll start in the Mishnah. Amar Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says, Maise b'megur shel diskim b'yavne. There's a story with a pool of diskim. Diskim may be a place, or maybe a person in Yavne. It was a mikveh that was on 66. It was a mikveh that was measured, and it had enough water in it. How much water? It's 40 saws. It's a good mikveh. But at a certain point, they measured it again, and it was missing water. It wasn't a kosher mikveh. So kol tarish nasal gaba. What about everything that went into that mikveh? And they put in vessels, and based on the mikveh, they thought it was pure, and then they used it for taras, which means pure grain. So Reb Tarfon says that it's all good until the time that we found that it was no good, right? That's called the chazaka. It had a chazaka. It's good until it's no good. Like tefillin. How's a chazaka? Rabbi Kiva metame. Rabbi Kiva says no, it's tameh. Okay. Reb Tarfon says mikveh zebecheska shalom ha'omed. This mikveh was always good. It has a chazaka that it's good. Because of a doubt, you're going to say that it's not good. You don't know what took place all of that time. It has a chazaka originally that it was good. We know at a certain point it's not good. But all of the interim in between knowing that it's good, knowing that it's not good, that had a chazaka, it had an assumption that it continues to being good. Why are you saying that it's not good? Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, Adam Zebcheskas Tami Amid. We're talking about the things that were put into the mikvah. They had an assumption that they were not clean. That's why you put them in the mikvah. They had an assumption that they weren't clean. Because of a doubt, you're going to say that they are clean. Basically, what do you look at? Do you look at the mikvah, which has an assumption that it's perfect, or do you look at the things that were put into the mikvah, which have an assumption that they're not? You can't say that it became pure because of a doubt, right? To approach this here. Amar Reb Tarfon, that's a clear machlekes. I mean, you could see two ways of looking at this. This is what a classic din Torah is. You know, two people come to court, each one is right. You know, there's two ways of looking at it. Okay, so Amar Reb Tarfon says, Mashallah, the marker of Gabi Mizbeach, ben Grusha ben Chalutza Shavidas Kshir. Let's say there's a kohen that's doing the service in the Beis Hamikdash. And then they tell him that, oh, by the way, we just found out, we were checking ancestry.com or whatever, and it turns out that your mother is a Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. Not your mother is a Ben. You are a Ben Grusha Chalutza. Your mother was a divorcee. Your mother, this kohen that's doing the service, right now, all the services that you did, we found out were really not good, because you're not really a kohen. Hello, yeah. Mother was a grusha or a chalutza, was a divorcee, which is prohibited to marry a kohen. So the halacha is, we're going to see it towards the end of the page. That's right. You can't do the service. The halacha is that all the services that they did until then are still kosher. Until they find out that it's a ben grusha ben still kosher.
And when they did find out,
then it's even whatever was done was done. It's only from then and on. It's only from then on. We have a limit from a pasuk. We'll see later on. Now, Reb Tarfon says, see, until you find out that it's no good, everything is good. Amar Rabbi Akiva says back, says, can compare this to the person that's doing a kohen that's doing the service on the altar. We find out that he's blemished. What's his blemish? That he's
Impure. Yes.
Well, impure would be like he's tummy, right? But here's a balmum. That means like one of his limbs is bigger than the other, you know. So why don't we notice it right away? And he's wearing a shoe that like he can't see, you know, the wide heel or something. Somehow he's covering up a blemish okay, we find out that he's a balmum. So what's the halacha then? Shavidas psula.
so what he's doing now?
Yeah, even past. Everything that he did while he had that mum is possible. So Amar Reb Tarfon summarizes. Says, you're comparing it to Balmum, which has a different halacha, that everything that was done is possible. But I compared it to someone that was a Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, the son of a divorcee, which it was the halacha is that everything was kosher. Let's see which one it's more similar to. Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. If it's more similar to the Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, we're talking about the mikvah, right? If the mikvah that's missing water now is more similar to the Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, then the Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, then that will be the correct comparison. My comparison, Reb Tarfon says. If it's more comparable to the blemish, then we'll compare it to the one that's blemished. Well, Israel Rabbi Akiva Ladan. Rabbi Akiva begins to show which one is more similar. That's the problem. But we're trying to figure out, we have different ways of comparing this. Do you compare it to this? Do you compare it to that? Rabbi Akiva is going to say which one it's more similar to. So he says, mikvah pisule biyachid, balmum pisule biyachid. The mikvah, how much water does a mikvah need? It needs 40 sa. If it doesn't have 40 sa, so then it's possible. Who tells us how much there's in it? Do you need two witnesses to measure it? No. One witness enough can tell me that it's possible. And a balmum, what about a balmum? A balmum also, one witness can tell me that the person is a balmum. I don't need two witnesses to testify that he's a balmum. And don't prove from Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza over there, I need two witnesses to tell me that his mother was a divorcee in order to invalidate him as a Kohen. Another interpretation over here that Rabbi Kiva said, mikveh pisule begufay, balmum pisule begufay. The mikveh is itself lacking. It has its own deficiency. And balmum pisule begufay. And the balmum has itself, the body of him, it has its deficiency. And don't compare it to the Ben Gerusha Ben Chalutza, this Kohen, that his his deficiency comes from his mother, comes from someone else. Okay. Amar Reb Tarfon says, Akiva, anyone that distances says from you is like distancing himself from life. He agrees to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is correct, which would mean that the mikveh, everything that was put into this mikveh,
this is interesting.
It should be invalid.
Okay.
Should be.
Uses the word chilatu, like telling it in present tense. Versus Omar Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Akiva began to judge.
I mean, how many times each one brings their side? It just Omar Lachdas,
Right.
Omar Lachdas. What's Ischil? Meaning this, like they're recording it live.
Yeah. Yeah, the Bryces are more
current. But Rabbi Akiva is a Tana.
Yeah, this is the Bryce. The Bryce. It's not a Mishnah. The Mishnah, the Bryces were less edited. And they're like, they give you sometimes like extra details, like
it's just
more like a novel. Tell you the stories. The Mishnayos are very like classic, you know. They cut out
but they're
all
not. But this so they're recording something that happened 200 years earlier.
No.
Rabbi Akiva is a Tana.
Kiva's Tana, Tarfon's Tana.
Right.
The Bryce is Tanai.
But from the time that was said until the time it was recorded.
They recorded in the days of Rebbe, but they really edited. They took it as it is.
Live.
Yeah, it's true. See what? They checked it periodically, and during those periodic checks, they found that it was missing. Now the question is, what about yesterday and the day before? They don't check it like every time you put something in. Yeah, they check it once a week. They check once a week. Mikveh, they probably checked once a month, once every 2 months, whatever.
So
you don't check it. The sheikh checks his knife before he shechs. But if he's shechting 400 chickens, he checks it at the beginning and he checks it at the end. What about all the ones in the middle? You have to wait for Masech Chulin, and we'll talk about them. Yeah. We don't know what he knew, what he didn't know. We're not blaming him right now. Over here, we're just checking what is the status of the services that he did. Maybe he didn't know the halacha. Maybe he didn't. We're not blaming him right now. That's a different story.
Like one was Normandy, one might have been Normandy.
Right. We're ignoring that detail, right? Well, what's the case of the Balmum that we said that there would be a one witness could invalidate, and Rava didn't finish his proof yet. All of this is Rava trying to prove that a eidecha that says that a woman committed adultery, you don't trust it. Okay, this is Rava's proving it. What's the case? If the guy says, I'm not a Balmum, what are you talking about? So you're going to trust one witness against him? Ella Deshasik must mean that he doesn't say that. He's quiet. And the Eidach says he's a Balmum, right? We said that Rabbi Akiva says that one witness is trusted to say that a Kayan is a Balmum. Balmum means he has a blemish, a defect. Has a defect. Okay, now let's compare it to the Ben Gerusha Ben Chalutza. The Shasik. We had one witness saying that his mother was a divorcee, and he is quiet. We have to have the cases, all the variables need to be the same except for the one detail that over here I need one witness, over there I needed two witnesses, right? What did Rabbi Kiva say? And we're saying that it doesn't work. Even though there was one witness saying and he was quiet, we're saying that it doesn't work. This is Rabbi's proof that one witness talking about a woman saying what she did is not acceptable, even if the husband is quiet, right? It says that doesn't work by Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. See, one witness testifying does not work even if the husband is, or even if the person that's involved is quiet. That's Rabbi's proof to this. What does Abaya say? Abaya Amar. Really, the person is saying that it's not true what you're saying. He's not quiet. You maybe have one witness, but the person is saying it's not true. And that's why it doesn't work by the Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. So why does it work by the Balmum? Why by the Balmum do we say that he is trusted? Because he tells him, take off the clothing and let's check if you're a Balmum. And that's the meaning of the statement. Because over there you can examine Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza, you can't examine it. Okay, that would be the second part of that. That's an Abaya would be stressing that part. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the basic premise of this because we got distracted a little bit about a Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. It says Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza Davidasik Ksherim Minalan. How do we know that if there's a kayan that wasn't really valid because his mother was a divorcee? How do we know that the service that he did was acceptable? Rav Yehuda Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, his past service was acceptable. From now on, it's not. But his past service, well, from now on, they won't let him. It says, the pasuk says, right? That he's going to be a kayan future generations. Bein zera kasher, bein zera pasal. Whether it's he's a kosher kohen, whether he's not a kosher kohen, any service that he did is going to be acceptable. It doesn't say, interestingly, that it's only when he doesn't know about it. Maybe if he forces his way in and he's a halal and he does the service, maybe it's acceptable to be epic as well. It doesn't say anything. It says no. It's only if it was unknowing.
But if he has, once he was told,
Once he was told, then he's profaned. And who's that a quote from? Okay. The Rambam says that once he knows, it doesn't work. It's only before he knows. Okay. One second. You talking about a blemish? Or you talking about his mother who was a Kohen? Oh, so that's a different story. That's a different halacha.
Ben's are apostle.
That's a different story. That's a different story. That's a mistake. No. That's not accurate. By the blemish, it's exactly the opposite halacha.
Rashi says Ben Zera follow. He's Zera, so he is. He's disqualified from future service. But the one that has the blemish of lineage.
In lineage, he's disqualified. Well, he's disqualified from future service. But my question is, let's say he did the service anyway. What happened? It doesn't mention. Okay. So we learned from a pasuk that the service that he did is acceptable. We have a question mark on what happens afterwards. Avu Dishmol Amar. Avu Dishmol says Mehacha has another source. It says Barech Hashem Chela Yafal Yadav Tirtza. Hashem. Well, this is in the blessing for Levi. Hashem blesses his strength and the work of his hands is acceptable. Afilu Chulan Shabbai Tirtza. Chela is being translated. Even if he's a halal, it still is acceptable. The work that he does, the service that he did. Rabbi Yani Amar Mehacha. Rabbi Yani has another. It's interesting. We have Shmuel, we have Avuda Shmuel, and now we jump over to Eretz Yisrael to Rabbi Yani. It says, "You'll come to the kain that's in those days." Which kain do you want to go to? A kain that's in different days? So Elazek Kasher v'Neschala. We're talking about that whatever the Kohen is, even if he was, we considered him kosher, and then we found out that he really wasn't. It was Neschala, still considered acceptable. Okay, now that only talks about the lineage was disqualified, that is still acceptable. However, Balmum Davidas Psulim, how do we know someone that has a blemish, a defect, that his service is not acceptable? Where do you know that from? Rav Yehuda Mishmuel says, Amar, therefore say, behold, I'm giving him the covenant of peace. Now the Gemara learns this, Keshehu Shalem. That's only when he's complete. The word Shalem, which means peace, also means complete. But not when he has a defect. It says Shalem, it has a vav in there. Rav Nachman vav de Shalem ketiyehi. Rav Nachman says that vav in Shalem has a little slice in the vav, and you don't. It's the top part of the vav. It's not attached to the bottom part. Yeah,
so among these pasukim, which one is the basis for the principle that we don't retroactively puzzle something among these pasukim?
I think all the ones about Baruch Hashem Chela, all the ones about the Chalal are all teaching me that you don't retroactively invalidate it.
These are all the ones in Devarim?
Yeah. No, well, it starts with Bamidbar, Vaisalei Elazar Achrav, Baruch Hashem Chela, and Avasal Akaina Sheyeh Bayam Mehem. All of those are showing me that you don't retroactively invalidate the service of the one that doesn't have the lineage. And then the Hinni Brisi Shalom tells me that you do invalidate if he has a blemish. Yeah, I was getting I don't remember. I remember someone saw the Sefer Torah, said Shalom, he thought there's a mistake in it. It's supposed to be like that, but that's a classic. And any other letter that would have been a mistake, and you would probably have to take out a new Sefer Torah unless it would look like a vav. So no, it's supposed to be like that.
So with the Sefer Torah,
Sefer Torah that's possible. You put it away, you take out a new one.
right?
But over here, you see this letter.
Yeah, I see that, but like every time it was used before.
Oh, I hear what
Like
you're saying.
Like the same thing with the mikvah,
Right.
the same thing with.
Yeah, they don't go back. They don't go back and reread.
Oh, did
Yeah,
everyone
3,
get this
17
far
years
for-
back.
I think so. I think so.
No, like.
Right.
I guess I'm wondering, given this discussion, we talked before about how from time to time in Israel, a subject comes up and the rabbis are concerned about whether they have to go back and retroactively disqualify certain conversions conversions mainly is what it was. Given this, I'm wondering why was there all that debate among the rabbis? Why wasn't this matter already settled according to what we've learned?
So you're asking about the halal and the.
It seems to me that there's a principle that's been established here. The specific cases there were conversions based upon the say-so of Orthodox rabbis in America
Oh.
who were subsequently found to be puzzle.
Uh-huh.
And should they go back and invalidate all the conversions that were accepted by the rabbinut? And I'm wondering, given this, what we've learned here, why were they debating the subject? It seems to be disposed of here.
Uh-huh. I think the answer to that is that here we have special limudim from psukim to teach me in each case how we view what we're supposed to do if that comes up. And over there, we don't have those limudim.
So they were limiting this they were not learning a principle here. They were limiting it to the case.
Those specific cases.
Elaborate.
Okay, we have a Mishnah, a very Kiddushin type Mishnah, and we're going to have 4 rules in the Mishnah. Each rule is going to tell me about the lineage of a person. Okay, how do you establish lineage? For example, if the mother is a Kohenes, is the child a Kohenes? If the a Kohen, the mother, if the do you follow the father being a Kohen, or do you follow the mother? Or if you have a convert of a mitzvah or something versus a mamzer, does the child become the mother's side or the father's side? And all types of issues like how it follows. You go after the mother, you go after the father. That's this mission. This is the basis for those rules. It starts like this: any proper marriage. Marriage is effective, gives her a ring, they get married, there's no sin. You always follow the father. What's an example of what you're talking about? You're talking about whether the mother was a Kohenes or Levi or Yisraelis, that marries a Kohen, Levi or Yisrael. You always follow whatever the father is. Practically, you follow the father without this Mishnah, practically, because if the Kohen would follow the mother, thank you.
Actually harvest.
Apple from Yitzi. So, Honey Crisp. So,
He scores 100 every test.
practically, if the mother, if we would follow the mother, then how would the child know how to do the service in the temple? It would be very impractical. The mother doesn't work in the temple, and the father is not a Kohen, right? If it would be any different than this, the only practical way of doing this would be that the father that works in the temple would train his children to work in the temple. Whatever that would be practical. But whatever the case is, now, without the practicality of it, this is the halacha. Anytime the marriage is effective, but it was a sin, they weren't allowed to have that marriage. The child takes on whatever defect there was in either side, whether it's the mother's side or the father's side. Basically, what case are you talking about? Anyone that marries the almana, if the widow marries a Kohen, so the child a Kohen Gadol, then the child becomes a chalal, or a divorcee. If a regular Kohen marries a divorcee, the child becomes a chalal. If anyone marries a mamzeres, the child becomes a mamzer. In other words, you always get the worst side of this. You always end up in the worst, the worst camp. That we're up to case 3 now. Anytime this marriage is absolutely not acceptable. However, these two people could have married anyone else. So, Havlad Mamzer, the child becomes a Mamzer. What case is that? This is someone that marries one of his relatives that he wasn't allowed to marry. So that relative, if someone marries his daughter, the daughter could have married anyone. He could have married anyone. There's no problem with them as individuals. There's only a problem with that union, right? That's the problem. So then the child is a mamzer. Whenever there's only a problem with the union, then the child is a mamzer. Case number 4. Anytime no one could get married over there, so then the child follows the mother.
Give you a minute. Is it Mutar to marry a woman?
Neither. Neither.
Moabite?
That was the Moabite. When it's mentioned Gibeonite, you're talking about the Nasin. That was just a decree not to marry them.
For several generations.
No, I think it was forever. What case would this be where there's no marriage at all? That would be if someone marries a shifcha, a maidservant, a non-Jewish maidservant, or if someone marries a non-Jew. If a Jewish man marries a non-Jew, So then the child follows the mother. Yeah. A theoretical explanation for that is that the connection that a man has to Hashem is that he's a ben bris. It's covenant. The covenant is in the reproductive area. So, but a woman also has a covenant, but it's not associated with the reproductive area. So if a man marries a non-Jewish woman, then he violates the bris, and so therefore the child is not a ben bris. But a woman, a Jewish woman that lives with a non-Jewish man, she does not violate her bris, because her bris is not associated with the reproductive area, so the child is still a ben bris. That's why follow the mother.
In identifying.
Identifying if it's true.
That's where we get
It's,
the halacha from. Right?
You get it from this mission, yeah. My theory that I'm adding over here is not necessarily holy. I mean, it's cute, but it's just a theory. It's not a thing.
I know this is a family.
Covenant is the circumcision.
Very much a family share. Watch
Women
out.
they have a covenant that's
vulnerable child
intrinsic
with
covenant. They have an intrinsic covenant. The Gemara says you should command the Mali. Women have a covenant with Hashem without having any ceremony. They intrinsically have a connection to Hashem. Yeah. Okay.
So the woman's covenant is not represented by anything physical.
Right. Right. And therefore it doesn't get violated if she lives with a non-Jew.
Mhm.
So therefore the child is still considered the child of covenant. Yeah. I heard that's from Rav Moshe Shapiro. Remember Rav Moshe Shapiro? He was like a big thinker. He lived in Israel. It's like a
Where did you
hear it?
Where did you hear it? There?
No, he came to a rabbinical conference that I was at, and he gave a speech. That was part of his speech. Okay. Kol makom sheish Kiddushin. The Gemara goes back to explain the Mishnah. Anytime when there's Kiddushin, we said that if there's no sin, then we follow the father, right? Follow the father. What was our example? A Kohen. Regular, it goes after what tribe he's from, goes after the father. Amalei Reb Shimon or Reb Yochanan on the side it says it's probably Reb Shimon ben Lakish. It could be Reb Shimon ben Lakish because Reb Shimon didn't speak to Reb Yochanan. Reb Shimon bar Yochai didn't speak. It must be Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Rish Lakish, right? They were brothers-in-law. Klalahu, is that a rule? The Kol Makom Sheish Kiddushin Vein Avera Havad Hayil Chacha Zacha. Is that you think that's a rule? That if there's no sin in that marriage, and the marriage is effective, right? That they would require a divorce. It's a real marriage. So that you follow after the male. It's not true. Let's say there's a convert that marries a mamzeres, a woman that's a mamzeres, which means really she's not supposed to be married to anyone from the congregation. But there's an exception. She's allowed to marry a convert. So the Ish Kiddushin, that's an acceptable marriage. The marriage is a good marriage. They would require a divorce if they would separate. Ve'in Avera, there was no sin in that marriage. The ger was allowed to marry her. You don't follow the father. You follow the one that has the bigger defect, which is the mamzeres. The child comes out as a mamzer. The Tanya Gershin as mamzeres of Vlad mamzer divrei Rabbi Yosi. It does not fit with the rule of our Mishnah. Rule number 1 of our Mishnah has a problem. We have one of those. We have a case that clearly doesn't fit with it. Amarlei Rabbi Yochanan responds to Rish Lakish. Misabris masnisin Rabbi Yosi. You're creating a problem because you're saying that our Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Yosi. But if I have a way out, masnisin Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar that he says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that case that you're telling me goes on the category 2, not on the category 1. On the category 1, everyone follows the father. On the category 2, you always follow the pugam. Whenever there's a marriage, category 2 was. Whenever there's a marriage and there's a sin, you always go after whichever side is worse, the more blemished. So it's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. A ger is not allowed to marry a imam seres, and so therefore there's an avera. Okay. Now, if you look at category 2, it says, give me an example. It says, Alman al-Kain Gadol, Grusha v'chlusa v'Kain Hedyet, Kain Hedyet, Mamzeres and Asinali, Yisrael, Bas Yisrael, Mamzenas. That was the example. The Gemara asks, B'nisnaye. So why didn't you put that example in there? Why did you say Bas Yisrael, a mamzer. Why did he say mamzer and sinal Yisrael? You could have said ger. So the Gemara answers Tana Kol Makim. The Seifa Lasuye. It says Kol Makim. When you look at the beginning of case number 2, it says Kol Makim Sheish Kiddushin V'yesh Aveira. Anytime. The fact that it says anytime, it's including more examples than the ones that it itemized. If you want, you can have a different shot. You can say, Lailam Rabbi Yossi, really, it is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi holds that the ger is allowed to marry a mamzer, and therefore it goes under category 1. Betana Ezazu, but if you look at category 1, it said, Ezazu, which cases does it include? And it said, a Kohenes Levi Yisraelis that married a Kohen Levi Yisrael. And it did not say a ger. So the reason why didn't it say it? Because by a ger marrying a mamzeres, you don't follow the father, you follow whichever one has more pagam. To exclude that case. You had a question that in category 1 we have another case that doesn't follow the rule. The reason why it doesn't follow the rule is because when we gave the examples, we left that one out. There was an exception. Gemara says, you're trying to tell me that because you itemized it, you're only including those things that were itemized and nothing else. That's basically the way the Gemara would be doing it, saying that you have to look at what the details are. No, that's the only thing. 1 second. What about a chalal? A chalal is a kohen that marries a woman that he's not allowed to marry. The child from the union of a kohen with a divorcee becomes a chalal. Okay, so now I have a chalal, a boy that's a chalal, and he marries a bas Yisrael. He marries a regular Jewish girl, not a kohen, not a kohenes or anything. That doesn't matter at that point. But the yesh kedushin be'ein aveira. A chalal is allowed to marry a regular Jewish girl. Halalah cannot marry a kohen, but a chalal can marry anyone. He's not a kohen. He's a nothing, right? He's not a nothing. He's a nothing status. He doesn't have a. Doesn't sound good. he's a something, but he's not a kohen status. So he doesn't have any. He doesn't have any kohen status, right? So he can marry a regular Jewish woman.
The offspring of
It's the offspring of the. Okay, now what is the status of that offspring? So. So if it's a woman, if it's a girl,
right?
yeah, it's considered Israel. If it's a girl, then there's a significance to that. She cannot marry a Kohen. But if it's a boy, then there's almost no significance to that because he can marry a Jewish girl. He's not a Kohen. What's the problem? It's only if it's a girl, but that's okay. So the answer. So the problem over here is that a chalal that marries a bas Yisrael, bless you, it's a kosher marriage. And there
is more.
What happens over here is that the chalal continues on, even though he was allowed to marry her, but the grandchildren now of that forbidden union are still halalim. And it's not significant if it's a boy because the boy can marry anyone, but it is significant if there's a girl grandchild. The girl grandchild cannot marry a Kohen, which means that those boys are considered a chalal. Why are they chalal? Because the father was a chalal. Yeah, both of them are forever. The only thing, the mamzer has a much bigger significance than a chalal. Mamzer can't marry anyone. A chalal can marry anyone. Just the halala cannot marry a Kohen. Yeah. But it continues on for all generations. So our question here is that we have another case that wasn't itemized in category 1, an acceptable marriage had no sin included in that marriage. It was an acceptable case. He followed the zachar, but it wasn't itemized. Says that's not a problem because Rabbi Stoi ben Rabbi Yehuda spirulite. Our Mishnah follows Rabbi Stoi ben Rabbi Yehuda, which we had like not too long ago this week. We had Rabbi Stoi ben Rabbi Yehuda said that women are like a mikveh tara for a chalal, that it does not continue on. If a halal marries a Jewish woman, a regular Jewish woman, the children are purified. The children get purified. Okay, so if that's the case, then we could say that it does not follow the Zachar, right? It does not follow the father. And it wasn't itemized. Okay. It wasn't itemized because it's not the case. It's not how it works. Which category would it go under? The Gemara left that vague here. Yeah. According to Rav Destoi. According to Rav Destoi ben Rabbi Yehuda. That was a unique opinion, which is, I don't think that's the halacha. The Gemara says, 1 second. Yisrael, what about a Jewish man that marries a halala? A girl that's a halal. Means her parents had a forbidden union between a Kohen and a divorcee, let's say. And now the girl, marries a regular Yisrael. The Yesh Kiddushin Daf, that over there, it's a regular marriage. There's nothing wrong with that marriage. And Avlad Hailach Achar Zachar. The father is the main, is Yisrael. The child's a Yisrael. Yeah. No, actually, the Kohen isn't allowed to do the service while he's married to her, but he's still a Kohen. It gets rid of her, he's back. His reputation. The children from that union become a halal, which means that they lose their kahuna. Yeah,
that's fine, but they're not.
Okay, now they're not damaged. They lose the kahuna, but if there's a girl, she cannot marry a kohen. That's called. She's a halala. And a halala is prohibited to marry. A kohen is not allowed to marry a borsi or a halala. Yeah. Now, but if that child is a boy, then he's just not a kohen, and he's allowed to marry any Jewish girl. The only thing is, if he has a child, well, that's a girl, the halala status continues on to that girl, and she can't marry.
Oh,
I don't know.
There's a legend.
It's the archive. The Mormons.
The Mormons. How many generations does this halala go through?
It continues forever. I don't know if they keep track of it, but anyway. Rab Destoi, Chalal Shnas Abbas Yisrael. Although the marriage is permitted, the child is a chalal. It's prohibited to marry a priest. Yisrael Shnas Chalala is another case, which means that, yeah, that's a different story. Now, 1 second. Yisrael Shnas Chalala, it is permitted for an Israelite to marry a chalala. The child follows the father, which means that if they have a daughter, it is permitted for her to marry. Yeah, that's because the daughter was the halala. But if the boy is the halal, then it continues on. I mean, it doesn't say over there. Okay, so our problem now is that we have a case of category 1. It's Kiddushin Daf, and we also, the halacha is the same like we said in category 1. The only thing is it wasn't itemized. So the Gemara says Tana Kol Makom D'Reisha L'Asuyah. So now we say, you know what? There are certain cases that weren't itemized but are included in the Kol Makom of the Reisha. What did we have included in the Kol Makom of the Seifa of the second case? We had Ger should not marry a Mamzeres. And if he does, the V'ad Helach Achar Pagam, that was according to Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, what do we have included from the Kol Makom of the Reisha? We have a Yisrael Shanasa Chalala. That's included. That the child follows the father, which is fine. Why don't you say it clearly? Because we can't say it clearly. How could we say it clearly? In other words, it would be so complicated to explain. What we just did here is we said Kayin Levi Yisrael that marries Kehenes Levia Yisraelis. Fine. If you want to throw in the case of Halala, then you're going to have to explain that we're not talking about the Kayin marrying the Halala. We're talking about the Yisrael marrying only one of those Kayin, only one of the only two of them could be the Levi also, but not the Kayan that marries the Halal. Only the Levi Yisrael that marries the Halal. So you'd have to make the case much more complicated to be able to say that. Okay, so now we have Ikka, but we have another case which is an itemized. The Rabba Bar Bachana, Dam Rabba Bar Bachana, Rabbi Yechon, and Mitzvah Sheni, Shnas Mitzvah Shena, and Ashlishi Havi. If a Mitzvah Sheni, second generation Egyptian, marries a first generation Egyptianess, it takes 3 generations to be able to get married in. So who do you follow over here? Over here it says you follow the father. Follow the father. So is that an acceptable marriage? Yes, they're allowed to get married. Yesh Kiddushin, Vein Avera, the child follows the father. Why was that not itemized in the list? We're asking, right? That's because of the rule is you follow the father. That's only when there's a sin. Here there was no sin. The true Egyptian converts are allowed to get married. Okay, so the Gemara says Kol Makom Dereisha Lasuye. It's included because it says Kol Makom. So now we have 2 things included now in that Kol Makom. We have the Chalala, the Yisrael Shnas Chalala. We also have the Rabba Bar Bachana's case. Rav Dimi Damar Sheni Havi. Rav Dimi, he follows your view. He says that you follow the one that's worse. So that should be that doesn't fit with the rule. The Gemara says, Tana Ezizu Lema'ute. According to Rav Dimi, I'm using the Ezizu to exclude it. Did we use the Ezizu of the Reish already? Yeah. If we followed Rabbi Yossi's view that a child, what was Rabbi Yossi's view? That a ger cannot marry that a ger that marries a mamzeres is acceptable. The child becomes the mamzer. It does not fit with the first case of the Mishnah. So we said Ezizu is coming to exclude it. When you itemized it, you didn't list it because that's an exception. But we have another case. When Rabban comes and says the name of Rabbi Yechanan, whenever two nations get married, not 2 nations, 2 individuals from the nations, from the non-Jews, they get married. So why is that significant? Well, let's say a male from Ammonite, an Ammonite that marries let's say a Mitzri male, male or female, takes 3 generations, but a male Ammonite is never allowed to get married, right? Ammonite, a girl, yes, but so whatever the case is, the Ravin says that you follow by the nations, you follow the male. The child would be an Ammonite in this case. Niskairu, but if they convert, then halachachar pagam shabish name. You always go after the one that's worse. That's whatever's worse when they convert, which category they go under, an Ammonite or a Mitzri. So why don't we say that seems to be an acceptable marriage, right? Two people from the nations. Where it says Tana Ezizu Lamute. Well, it says Ezizu, that's coming to exclude it. Right? Which one is it excluding? I'm not sure if it's excluding the Niskairu or it's probably excluding the Niskairu. Niskairu, when they convert, and it says that you followed the one that that's more blemished, but that doesn't fit with the first case of the Mishnah, with the first ruling of the Mishnah. So it says Ezizu is excluding it. Where it says Hi Mai. What's going on over here? If you say our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda held, going back to case number 1, Rabbi Yehuda held that a ger is not allowed to marry a mamzeres, right? And therefore it's a sin, and therefore it fits perfectly under category 2. Kol makim dereisha. So when it says kol makim in the reisha, that's coming to include, in the first case, lasu Yisrael shnas chalala. That a Yisrael is, even though it wasn't itemized, but the child follows the father, which is case number 1, which is category 1. The Rabba Bar Bachana, and also the case of Rabba Bar Bachana, which says a second generation Egyptian that marries a first generation child is a third generation. That's even though it wasn't itemized, but it's included because it says Kol Makim. And Ezizu, what is the Ezizu? when it says when it does itemize, that's excluding the Rav Dimi Baravin. The two cases of Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi said that the child by the Egyptian is the second one, which means you follow the more blemished, right? And the case of Ravin, which was that when they convert, you always follow the one that's more blemished. So we have a Ezuzu, it's excluding that. Kol makim de seifa, and when it says kol makim in the second case, that when there is a marriage, but it's considered a sin, that would be including lasi ger shenas mamzeres. That would go under that category because Rabbi Yehuda held that a ger is not allowed to marry a mamzer, and you always follow the one that's more blemished. Okay, good. But if you say that we're going to follow that other answer, so really it's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. And kol makaim dereisha kedamran. When it says kol makaim, it's coming to include that case. Is it coming to include that case? Kol makaim dereisha. According to Rabbi Yossi, Iba Yasema was Yisrael Shenas Halala. Rabbi Yossi would say kol makim would be Yisrael Shenas. Be'ezezu kedamran, and Ezezu was the one that was excluding that case. Ela kol makim the seifa lasuyimai. What about the kol makim of the seifa? What's it coming to include? Anything more than what it said in the Mishnah. Whenever there's Kiddushin and there's an Aveira, it's not coming to include anything because you said, according to Rabbi Yossi, the catch over here is Rabbi Yossi holds that a ger is allowed to marry a mamzeres. It's a permissible marriage. The only problem is that the child follows the more blemished one, not the father, which is case number one, which is an exception to category one. So he said, okay, so it's getting excluded by the Ezuzu because you didn't list it, so that's the exclusion. But in category two, it says kol makaim, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, category two would include a ger that marries a mamzeres because that was Kiddushin with a sin. The ger was not allowed to marry a mamzer. That was coming to include that case. But according to Rabbi Yossi, he doesn't have anything to include for that. The Gemara says, according to you, you're making such a big problem over this about category two. According to Rabbi Yossi, according to you, Rabbi Yehuda, Ezuzu the seifa lemutimai. What are you excluding from Ezuzu? I did the tani reisha Ezuzu tani seifa Ezuzu. Rather, which is just making it symmetrical. So achinami, I did tani reisha kol makim tani nami seifa kol makim. That shouldn't be a problem.
I mean, if there is, it's just that they're
right. Not every single one of these kol makims or Ezuzu are being used. But we were using some of them, so we added it to all of them. Okay, let me get to the two dots. Yeah. Gufa. We learned before. Any nations that get married, you always follow the male. And once they convert, you follow the one that's worth. What's the case? We have a brisa. Any of one of the nations which you're allowed to let live, that comes on a Canaanis, which we were supposed to wipe out. Ben, and he has a child. That you follow the father, and you're allowed to keep him alive and actually buy him as a slave. Even those that came to dwell amongst you, you're allowed to buy. We're talking about that that someone from another country comes to Canaan and marries one of the Canaanite women. The children are acceptable to keep alive. And let's say that a Canaanite marries another nation, right? A woman from another nation and has a child, that maybe you're allowed to marry to keep that child alive. That was given birth in your country. Basically, the women stay put and the men go traveling. So it would mean that if someone from another nation comes to Canaan, you follow the father, right? And if someone from Canaan goes to another nation, you follow the father over there as well, which means that he becomes a Canaanite. That's the source. Canaanite is, it's paternal, and it's problematic because Canaanite was from the nations that we weren't allowed to let live. Is that how it works? No. Okay, have a good Shabbos, everyone.
Yeah.